It's time for today's episode of the UGA Sports Live Podcast, recorded in front of a slightly tipsy studio audience at world-famous Champy's Fried Chicken. We will have the latest on Georgia Bulldogs football, basketball, and recruiting. Watch live and send us your questions on the 11 Alive Sports page on Facebook. Be advised this podcast is off the record and not safe for work. Also, be sure to subscribe to the UGA Sports Live Podcast on iTunes and Google Play.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Happy Birthday Coach Donnan edition of the UGA Sports Live Podcast here from Champy's on Baxter Street. We are very close to cutting into some cake here and celebrating Coach Donnan's 37th birthday. We're going to have a good time here on the show today. We're going to answer all your questions, and or at least try to, and talk some recruiting, talk some football stuff, and we hope that you stick around for the entire hour or so. My name is Rodney Nabulsi. I'll be your host. I'm joined by Jake Roos, the recruiting superstar at UGAsports.com, and, of course, Jim Donnan, Hall of Fame coach, former Georgia head football coach, and birthday boy today.
Most importantly, I think,
yes. Yeah. So today's his birthday. We've got some hats, got some horns, got some cake, a awesome Super Bowl special. What have we got, 12 wings and 6 beers?
12 wings, 6 beers for your Super Bowl.
For one,
$20. Basically, you get 6 beers, and then they throw in the wings for about a buck, so 49 cents.
So the Super Bowl is in Atlanta this year. If you're not heading down there and you are in town, you want to swing by Champy's, they have a fantastic deal for you here at Champy's. So come by, get the Super Bowl special. And, of course, they have all their other menu items, too. I'm getting that Philly chicken sandwich.
I had that last week for lunch. It was tasty.
On my way out the door, so we're set up there. Also want to give a big shout out to Athens Ford. You know, if you don't want to watch the Patriots in the Super Bowl, go by Athens Ford. They'll take care of you. And we got some snow, I believe, on the way. You know, if you've got a Ford F-150, you're not worried about the snow. Trust me on that. Big shout out to Aaron Overhead Doors. They will keep you warm if it's snowing. You know, go into your garage. Your garage will be fine because you have a good insulated door. They can put one of those in for you. Of course, Europi will also keep you warm. And they I was wrong last week. I said there was like 60 locations in works. They have 60 locations. 50 more are in the works.
Oh, okay.
So I'm sorry. I'm still around 110, but I was backwards on my numbers there. So, yeah.
Got a good plan, I'd say.
Yeah, they do. And one of the best franchises you can get into. So if you want to be rich, you know, and you can just sit around and watch a show on a Tuesday at noon, you know, that's what bosses can do. So get yourself a Europi franchise. Of course, Academia Brewing Company, keep you warm inside and out. Great food, great drinks. They will also have the Super Bowl on, I'm sure. And, of course, Cable East, which is probably bringing you the Super Bowl, but you don't even know it. So thanks to them. And, of course, 365 Game Day. If you need gear, stop by them. And, of course, 11 Alive. We're on the 11 Alive Facebook page. If you want to ask Coach Donnan a question or wish him happy birthday, go ahead and do that in the comment section there. Please share this with your friends. We would greatly appreciate it. We want to let everybody know this is Coach Donnan's birthday, and we want to answer as many questions as possible. This is a great day to get your questions answered. But first, we want to jump into – I don't say we do a monologue, but we do kind of touch on the topics of the day. We're, 8 days away from signing day, and in years past, we probably would not do a podcast this close to signing day. We'd be doing war rooms, updates, planning on where to go.
Checking ourselves out of mental hospitals.
Yeah, I mean, in years past, the 8 days away from signing day, I'm not going to complain about our jobs. We have the greatest jobs in the world. But it was a pain in the butt.
It was. And I think that it's one of the – personally, from my perspective, I know that there are a lot of hang-ups with this new early signing period, and I get it. Get kids moving around and coaches and that kind of thing. But for us, it's really taken a lot of the stress off of
it just moved it into December.
It did. It did to a degree. But, used to it was you were focusing on all 25 kids leading up to this day. Now it's, now we're keeping up with what? Maybe I think we had about 8 or 10 kids on our board yesterday, on our hot board.
And we would have had about 35 to 40 on the hot board in years past.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Your hot board prior to the early signing day had about 26 names on it. So Georgia's looking at, you said last week, 2, maybe 3 spots, in that range. It's not a large group, but it is a very important group that we have to look at. And you gave us some predictions. You gave us where things stand, but that was before a big visit weekend.
Yep.
Things have changed. So where do we stand now when we're looking at signing day next Wednesday? More spots, less spots? What's going on?
I think that the number of spots is going to be just the same. I think that you're looking in that 2 to 3 range, and I think probably what Georgia's going to try to do. You've already seen them do it with John Plumlee, but it looks like we reported yesterday about Eli Wolf, a Tennessee transfer, that they may try to use the blue shirt option to kind of shoehorn some guys
so what
in.
Is he?
So he's a tight end, former, I think he was a 2-star in high school, but he played at Tennessee, followed his brother Ethan Wolf, who was a very good tight end for the Volunteers. Eli visited last weekend and picked up his offer from the Bulldogs. Now, it is the blue shirt, so that's obviously the scenario like Plumlee has where you're going to have to, if you want to come in the summer, you got to pay your own way. But you can show up in August, enroll at that time, get your classes started, and essentially treat it like a red shirt year kind of off the bat, and then they count forward in the class.
2020.
Yeah, he'd be a 2020 guy.
So could he play next year?
Yeah.
Okay. So they can play basically the blue shirt because, people don't understand red shirts or the new thing, gray shirts.
What's up, Bill? Good to see you, buddy.
Now we have blue shirts.
Good to see you. Glad to
So
come.
the blue shirt is you have a kid come in, he plays for you, but his scholarship doesn't count till the following year.
Correct. Yep.
The year that he starts, right.
And I think that goes into
like I'm talking about 2019 guys are guys that we've got these 20-some signed, and the 2 others, they will count in 2019, but this guy wouldn't count whoever it might be until to the 2020 class because he's –
But so your 2020 guy, your Eli Wolf and Plumlee, if he decides to stick with it, can they play in 2019?
Well, the reason that the difference between a blue shirt and a gray shirt is a gray shirt's like Waldtower sits out the fall campus, and he ends up coming here and counting back on this year's class. Remember that? He's one, and my man here was one of the few that remembered he might still count. Remember people on your board there, this guy was counting him when nobody else was, so inside skinny by the man who shaved today for my birthday. And,
just for you, Coach.
But I think that's important, though, that you got to look at the numbers, and with Kirby running the show and Marshall Malco, they're always looking at how you can acquire depth, what you need. We've lost – all of a sudden we've lost Ford and Alda, which we didn't expect to lose those 2. So we got to get – maybe this guy's the answer. There's probably some other guys that are looking at it tight end. But the blue shirt really helps you from that standpoint, and that you can, have a guy in here. If he wants to come in the summer and pay his way and work out, that's great. But, it'd be hard to play on the team if you don't work out in the summer.
And I think I think it's probably – it's advantageous from – I would say the largest part in depth. It's another you're there. You've got a reserve in case you need a guy. Look, you're hoping that he doesn't have to play or be called on, but you've got him there in case he doesn't.
Right. Well, in the case of Wolf, though, he would have to play because this is last year, so he couldn't.
Sure.
But in the case of Plumlee, it's just a situation where you articulate back and forth to the kid, hey, we want you on our team. More than likely you're going to red shirt anyhow. We need to get another guy that's probably going to play quicker, come in the spring. 14 early enrollees, a lot of people here to help our team because we don't lose that many guys graduating, and we lost 4 transfers, to the pros and a couple of transfers. So spring practice will be really important for these early enrollees and give them a chance to see what they can do. And that's one thing throughout the spring. We'll have some good updates on these guys about how they're able to help our team. I know last year we talked about the way that Stokes was improving, the way that Hill was, really the surprise of the whole spring. So that's why you got to keep listening to the show. You never know what you'll find out.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the blue shirt, obviously, like we said, at play here, be interesting to see how Georgia ends up using that. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how big or prevalent that becomes, because I think that could be a really good tool for a number of teams.
But it's dangerous.
It is.
Well,
You run a risk.
Everything's dangerous.
I'm just saying it's like me with my checkbook. I'm writing checks that, they're going to come due later on, but I don't have the money in the bank right now.
But the deal with our squad that I think's really been impressive to me is I read online a couple days ago the number of pro prospects that had signed from each school, top schools from the SEC all the way down. And since we've started the championship series, I think this was the 4th or 5th year.
I think we're on 5. Yeah.
So we've had 17 guys go pro in these 5 years, and we're going to have some more this year, which is not really many when you look at it, any way you look at it. And for us to be in the national championship game in the second year here and the SEC championship both years without that much firepower, obviously we had some last year with those 3 guys going real close to the first round. But I just think that's really speaks volumes on where we're headed, because there's going to be more and more. If you look at our defensive depth and the kind of guys we got over there, and I can't say that 5 stars automatically relate to going and being drafted, but you guys have been watching for longer than I have. But I think that's a real good indicator that we're going to have more and more guys drafted, which will help our squad and help particularly our defensive interior in the inside linebacker area.
Absolutely. I think that you mentioned getting all of that right, and I think that's the big thing. A lot of people wishing you happy birthday here, by the way. William Bruce popped in, Jeff Dyer's got one in there. This is a really interesting question because it was something that we saw a lot of.
Marilyn Monroe going to sing "Happy Birthday, Mr. President."
We have Dave McMahon.
Yeah, a lot of. I want to do this one from Alvin Todd because I think you'll have a good feel on this. He says, Coach, a lot of PWOs popped this past weekend. Preferred walk-ons, Brandon Bunkley among them. Big kid out of Eagles Landing.
Snapper.
You got the snapper, Vega, out of Buford. So several of those guys, coming on. First off, Coach, they want to know, what does that mean, and what benefits can they provide for PWOs?
Here's what it means to your team. First of all, numbers. I mean, you've got to have a scout team that gives you a good look. I mean, any way you look at it, your scout team is invaluable. And we talked about how Kirby talked about the week of the Tech game and after the Tech game, how great a job our scout team did emulating their plays. Well, you got to do the same thing with everybody you play, because you don't beat yourself into submission going against yourself all the time. So you got to have a good scout team, and usually those guys are walk-on guys. And one of the problems, having been the coach here and knowing our situation, there's so many schools playing football adjacent to this state and in the state. When you look at Kennesaw State, Georgia State, Mercer, all these schools, West Georgia. So if a kid is on the bubble, he's going to probably get a scholarship somewhere else. So you have a hard time getting preferred walk-ons to come here and pay their way. They might get the Pell Grant. They might get the Hope Scholarship. But it's still, it's hard to turn down a scholarship.
No question.
For instance, a guy like Stetson Bennett turned down several scholarships to come here and was a great preferred walk-on, but then he ended up going to JUCO. Now he's back. But real quickly, it's just squad numbers are so important. In the fall, you can have an unlimited amount of players. You can have 125, 130. I think we have about 130 out there, 85 scholarship, and the rest are kickers, snappers, preferred walk-on linemen, special teams guys. And then, but in the summer, you can only have 105.
Okay.
So let's say we finish the fall and the winter and the spring. So Kirby's got to decide which of those, on top of the 85, of those 20 scholarships, those walk-ons are going to be carryovers from the spring and the previous year, or preferred guys coming in. And then once school starts, you can have unlimited. But some brilliant people in the NCAA figured it's a real cost-saving method to only have 20 walk-ons at your practice, which is ridiculous. But I think they should open that up. But they say it's a real advantage for some schools to bring in more walk-ons than others. But the bottom line here, if you're offered a preferred walk-on by University of Georgia, you're a pretty good player, because we're very selective in who we bring in, because you can't bring in but a few of them, because you don't want to take away a guy that's been here 2 years working his butt off and is probably in a position maybe to be a backup that might get a scholarship. You don't want to take that guy off your squad.
Absolutely.
So it all gets back to numbers and balancing it out.
I think about it, you only have 20. that you can bring in who could work out with the team in the summer. And the summer workouts are vitally important. We see guys make huge strides in the summer workouts. Well, we don't see them. We hear about it because we're not allowed to watch them. So
right.
we hear about guys making big strides. But you think about it.
But that 20's got to include the other from the previous year.
That's what. But I'm saying. So you got 20 total. So you're only going to have a couple offensive linemen, a couple defensive linemen, a couple guys in the secondary, maybe one tight end, maybe a couple quarterbacks.
Usually snappers.
Yeah, in other words, it gets spread out by the time. It's not like you're going to have 6 preferred walk-ons on the defensive line. You just don't have enough bodies there. And then out of that 20, so you only have a few. And then you've got guys. We saw. I'm trying to think of big curly-haired offensive lineman, been there for years. He just was a senior, and I saw him walk the other day. Got hurt.
Oh, Daniel Gothard.
Yeah. So, a guy like that who's been around, well, you need him, and so he's going to be there. So that takes away one of your offensive line spots, and you only have a couple of those preferred walk-on spots to begin with because you definitely want him to come back. You want your long snapper to be there all summer. So when you see these guys like Vega and, was it Buckner? Bunkley. Those are very coveted spots and very vital. So I know we're making a big deal out of preferred walk-ons and some people rolling their eyes, but I'm like, look, these are the guys. If it were not for Stetson Bennett and what he did preparing Georgia for Oklahoma, you would not have won that Rose Bowl game.
Sure.
I will say that till the end of my days because every kid on the team told me that.
It's the same thing. The comparison would be when we have the NFL draft. You get 7 rounds, and then as soon as that's over with, there's a rush to judgment to sign these free agents. Because you need practice guys. You need depth. You know what your needs are. It's the same way with these preferred walk-ons. And the best thing about what happened with the early signing date for me is the coaches can spend more time recruiting these guys and bringing them in for a visit and showing them what you got as compared to, let's say, Roddy would be a 5-star, so he would be here on a visit, and we would really have to work our butts off with him. But then all of a sudden we bring in another guy that's a preferred walk-on. When you got 20 official visits, you're not going to be able to do the job with that kid. Whereas last weekend was almost all about preferred walk-ons and underclassmen 2020, 2021.
Which is crazy. If you would have told me 3 years ago that on the next to last official weekend, it would have been nothing but juniors and preferred walk-ons.
That's hard to believe, isn't it?
That's crazy. But to the point, and we saw these guys, they actually got to go through and they did the photographs like the 5-star guys do, They got the tours. Yeah. And it shows them, hey, we want you here. Because, again, like you said, some of those guys have offers to go play football elsewhere. And they got to turn to their parents and go, hey, Mom, Dad, I know I have a scholarship to play at Berry College. I have a scholarship to play at Stetson. I have a scholarship to play at Presbyterian. But I want to go walk on at UGA. Here's the tuition bill.
Here's the other thing about that I think Kirby's got such good credibility with the high school coaches. Yeah. And such, you see all these guys happy that he comes into their school and puts it on Twitter and all that. But he does have that relationship that he's telling these kids, look, it's pretty important for you to know that we wouldn't offer you a preferred walk-on unless we thought you really had a shot. So we're not trying to take advantage of you. So, and there's a lot of these guys that go on and earn scholarship. And
Rodrigo Blankenship.
As a coach, that's one of the things you really enjoy doing if you can is bring a guy in here and then let him get that scholarship because he sacrificed for you. And you're going to go that extra mile to give it to him if he deserves it too. And that's great for these other kids to see that.
Our buddy Chuck Ward points out, he's got a question that we'll get to here in just a bit, but he points out the starting center and captain for the Patriots on Sunday was an undrafted free agent.
Chuck, quit stealing my stuff.
Right there. There you go.
That's good.
Now, Coach, some people are asking.
How about Belichick saying, hey, he likes those Kirby Smart players?
Would you let me say something here?
No, he did. He said that. He's right.
No, when you said that.
He liked those Jim Donnan players, too.
Yes, he did. We
got to remember one other thing, and don't let us forget it here today. We got to talk about the Hall of Fame, 2 Georgia players on Saturday going up out of the 5 out of the 15, Champ Bailey and Richard Seymour. We need to talk about them a little bit because that's pretty dang strong for the University of Georgia. All right, keep going here.
And I was going to say that when you mentioned Kirby Smart having credit with the high school coaches, I was going to mention he's got credit with Bill Belichick, too. And Bill Belichick comes out and says that Kirby's got a good system for getting players ready for the NFL. And if he doesn't have that quote posted on a billboard for the recruits coming in this weekend.
He'll have it.
On a T-shirt, a tattoo. I don't care.
Well,
Somewhere along the line.
he won't do it, but his other people will.
The recruiting staff.
That's good word of mouth stuff, but everybody knows that. I mean, Coach Belichick, he can go anywhere he wants to in the spring. Everybody likes to get him to come, but the reason he came to speak to Georgia last year, he and McVay both, that was two pretty – Coach Smart's looking clairvoyant there. He had the guys in the Super Bowl speak at his spring clinic. So it's the fact that they love to not only come and talk to the coaches, but they also, while they're here, they'll go and talk to the staff and spend a couple hours in there, talking about some things they're doing. And the thing that I always thought was good about Belichick, he was wanting to know some of the things that your staff's doing too. He's keeping up. There's different ways to skin a cat, and the college game is getting more and more salient in the pros. If you look at Cliff Kingsbury getting that job,
question.
if you look at all the RPOs people are doing with Philadelphia winning last year, and now Kansas City being so good. So it's just coaches like Belichick are smart enough to come in and talk to these college coaches about what they're doing too.
You mentioned this. I want to take one step back because that was important, but we're on this preferred walk-on talk, and I wanted to touch with you about how important the scout team is, and also how have you seen Kirby remake it since he's been here? Because I feel like it's something that he talks about a lot in press conferences after games. They gave us a great look this week. They were able to kind of recreate these things. The emphasis that he puts on that seems to be extremely high.
Well, it all comes back that our staff has been enumerated from the standpoint of help. They can't do a lot on the field, but they can do a lot of prep. So it's obvious if you study another team as a scout team player, let's say you're the wide receiver that's going to be Judy in the championship game of SEC. So they'll have some people in there watching tape with him, showing him, hey, this is where we want you to line up on this route. This is the way we want you to release, and we want you to do this exactly like they do. So you get that quality rep, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And these analysts and these quality control people study that, and they teach it to these kids, and they meet with them while the offensive line and all the other segments are meeting. The scout team is meeting on what they're going to do to present that at practice that day. And that organization is heavy as far as preparation. And, I think about 5 weeks ago before we played a game, I told the people, you have no idea how good our scouting reports are. Back in the old days, you'd have a list of the numbers and position, height, weight, all that stuff, their basic plays, their formation, all. It'd be about 4 or 5 page booklet. Our scouting report is as soon as it's got a play on there, then it's got a video of it. Then it's got the kid, some of his good plays and some of his bad plays and all that. I mean, it is strong, man. Stronger than Utah. It's stronger than Bridge Cable.
Yeah.
Because it's so thorough that if you look at it like this, and that's the last thing. The first time you see anything usually embeds in your mind about something. You know what I mean? You remember it a lot quicker. So the first vivid thing they see about their next opponent is a really concise video breakdown plus the written part of exactly what this other team's all about. So when you leave that place on Sunday, they can't work out with them or anything, that's their day off, but they've got a report there, and then they have on Monday they'll have the coach will get up and go over it, word for word with them, and they get it. So by the time they practice the first time on Monday, they got a dang good idea what's going on.
Well, to your point, we actually ask a lot of these players, what have you seen on film of this team? And we're asking them Monday morning during the press conference before they've had their team meetings. They've maybe had a class or two, or they got classes later on. They're going to practice at 3:30. We're asking them, hey, what have you seen on Georgia Tech? What have you seen on Tennessee? What have you seen on Florida on film? What do you know about them? And these kids are already able to answer those questions because they've looked ahead, if you will. They've had their homework.
They got the iPad. Every player on our team has an iPad, and every player most teams do in Division I. and all you do is upload practice tape. When you leave practice on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you go back to your room, you watch your practice tape. You also watch what you saw of the other team as compared to coming the next day on Thursday and seeing it back in my day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
You got to watch the tape. So it's just modern technology to the max.
And real quick here on Ronnie Brown, I want to hop in.
What was
here
Chuck
with,
Ward's other question? That
we'll get to Chuck's right here after this. But Ronnie says, happy birthday, Coach. First off, he says, but it sounds like the scout team guys are some of the smartest on the team. Not only are they learning your playbook, but it seems like they're having to learn a new one every game week as well.
Yeah, they got to be quick on the trigger, and but at the same time, you don't have to be an Einstein when a guy holds up a card and says, "Hey, this is what you do." You know,
sure, sure.
But what they do in the meetings is, like I say, talk about the technique. You know, hey, he has a tendency before he makes an outbreak to stand up a little bit, or he has a tendency when he's trying to cut off a block that he will cross over on his step. So even though you've been taught to do that as a Georgia player, you want to use that technique that guy uses.
Yeah, I will tell you, I've seen one of Georgia's breakdowns of an opponent, and I learned more about some of these kids than I should.
That was bad, too. Ronnie found the dang scouting report over there. He found the scouting report on Notre Dame, and he said, should I turn this in? And I said, no. If you turn that in, Kirby will go crazy because he'll know somebody left it out.
I can tell you.
You saved somebody's job that day.
I know which kid Notre Dame closes his eyes before impact.
Yeah,
I mean,
there you go. There you go.
They know who closes their eyes at impact. I mean, that's how closely they're watching and breaking these kids down. I was impressed.
But, you know, back in the old days, which we're going to feel some stuff today, we used to have, when a team would leave the hotel, when we had a home game, we had the maids there going through there and checking to see if they left anything. You know, hey, did they leave any game plans, anything?
Is there a whiteboard?
No, I mean, seriously. Sometimes, you know, kids got scouting reports on the road. I always you couldn't get on the bus to go to the stadium unless you handed your scouting report to the coach.
Really?
Because you didn't want, or whatever your notes were, because you didn't need to leave that around. I mean, and we used to, you know, I guess I'm telling stuff on myself, but when the other team's plane would land in Atlanta, we had a guy from Delta, man. He searched that baby, see what he could find.
That's awesome. I love it.
That's why Delta's a flying
the partner of Georgia football.
And speaking of, they need to sponsor our show. We need some free tickets. But I do want to give a big shout out to Athens Ford, who is a major sponsor of our show. They do fantastic work for the folks in the area. They do a lot of charity work, and they do great customer service. I was hit up recently by a guy who went out there and bought a Ford F-150, and that's why I know that you won't have trouble if it snows in your Ford F-150, because this guy also went out there right after that and had he described it to me as a lift. He had the whole thing lifted up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and he was talking about I'm talking about his new truck. He's talking to me about the lifting.
Yeah.
You know, and he said, yeah, I had this put in, and it was all Greek to me because I don't understand that stuff.
Yeah, it's understandable. You're not really from the country,
I'm from Conyers, man.
That ain't the country.
I'm from poor. So anyway, he was talking about the lift, and he was giving me all the brand names and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, look, you need to break this down to me because I want to mention this on the podcast. How to work out. He's like, Roddy was fantastic, and it was a great deal. I'm like, okay, so if you want a Ford F-150, and they have – I've spoken to the guy out there that does their customization things, and, you know, anything you want from the, you know, the bed liners to the floor mats to the step bars to the all that crazy stuff, like all the stuff that comes on a Raptor, like standard. If you want to make your Ford F-150 more Raptor-ish, they can do all that stuff out there. They can put different hoods on.
Badass is what it is.
Yeah, if you want to make it badass, then they can order anything, and they have stuff in stock, and they always have deals. So go to athensford.com, check on the service page. They're always having specials on their service parts. But if you want some customization, if you want to make it nicer, I want to get some of those. What do you call you put them on the floorboard.
Floor mats?
Floor mats that are the rubberized
The
ones.
WeatherTech ones.
Right.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Yeah. Those guys I'm going to go out there and have them put in the actual Ford brand guys because I got a dog. I got a 14-year-old son. I'm a slob myself. You know? There was a drink that went into the floor the other day. We're not going to discuss that. But Yeah, we definitely need some of those new floor mats. But those folks can take care of it. And of course, if you need a 2019 or a pre-owned vehicle, go out to Athens Ford and get the lifetime powertrain warranty on it. But if you already have one, like me, you can go out there and get a service done. Great service bay, free drinks, great internet, cleaner than my house. Definitely cleaner than my office. It's just cleaner than my house. Cleaner than my office. The rest of the house is nice, but definitely I should probably work from out there.
Yes.
It'd be a lot nicer. The internet's faster, I guarantee you. So if you get a chance, swing by Athens Ford.
I got to ask you a question right now because it's been bothering me because I don't have access to you like these other guys. But last week, you came out of the blue on me and gave a report that Shepherd kid was on campus here before anybody else knew it. So first of all, good job.
Thank you.
Second of all, how we stand with that kid?
Yeah, pretty
Tell us
interesting.
about it.
Pretty
I mean,
interesting.
hey, that's why you
definitely
read UGASports. I mean, nobody knew that guy was here.
Yeah, so Giovanni,
until somebody else copied it.
Giovanni Shepherd, 4-star Texas commit, offensive tackle.
Isn't he a 5?
He's a 4 for us. But he's a Texas commit and is from the Houston.
On the eyeball test. Right?
Oh God, he's a monster of a human being. Was supposed to come not this past weekend, but the weekend before that. There were some hang-ups in Houston. Didn't miss his ride, something of that nature. Anyway, didn't end up making the trip, and we kind of just assumed, hey, bygones be bygones. It's the kid's from Texas. He's not expected to leave the state anyway. Not a big deal. All of a sudden, last Thursday, pops up in Athens, puts in a visit with the Bulldogs for 2 days, and has a chance to see them. You got to think, look, regardless of what we've heard on the kid getting out of state, and I still maintain him getting out of state is a long shot. It's going to be a really tough pull because Texas A&M and Texas both feel good about it. But the fact that kid went out of his way to give you that visit, to reschedule things, to make it all work out.
The midweek visit, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good sign. That's a pretty strong little sign, I would say.
Well, I've done this before, and I've mentioned it numerous times. I know it's not a great analogy, but I always mention when you're playing blackjack and you're looking at 14, 15, the dealer's showing a 10. You're like, well, I need to take a card here, and all the books tell you to do it. You take one and you bust. Well, then all of a sudden the dealer busts. Well, they don't give you your money back.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
So to me, I always say you got to be in it to win it. I stay on the table. I wave off another card, even though the percentages. I'm like, look, I'm going to stay in. I want a shot at this. And you do not get a shot unless you get the kid on campus.
If he doesn't, chair. Yeah.
We can name on one hand the number of kids who have come to Georgia sight unseen.
Right, that's not going to happen. But where it helps you, though, regardless of, well, it'd be great if we could get the guy, get him and Elam and, maybe one other guy on the blue shirt or graduate transfer or whatever it might be. But where it really helps you is the significance of the fact that kids from Texas see, hey, he's going to tell those kids around there what this visit was like. He said, hey, I went to Georgia. I probably might have gone a little bit too late. I wish I'd have started on it earlier. Boy, right. Man, you ought to check it out. And that's what's helped us on guys like Stevenson this year. I mean, Devon Wilson, Campbell recruiting them.
Absolutely.
You got guys on camp now, signs here from Texas. I mean, we built a relation. We're going after these kids in California. Now, we're always going to build a base here in Georgia, that's for sure. But when you can go out of state and get a guy like Moses Smith, like we were able to get, or or Witherspoon from Florida, I mean that just adds to your class, man. And that I think
we can go up in the Northeast and get DeAndre Swift, a Mark Webb, and now you're looking at
Isaiah Wilson.
Yeah. So all of a sudden,
yes, absolutely. Brian Breesy. The D.C. area is hot this year with Georgia recruits. I mean, you've got Mikael Sherman's up there.
Oh, yeah.
Brian Breesy. You got Chris Braswell, Damon Clowney. I mean, it's a really stacked class up there
Justin
this year.
Rogers up in the Michigan.
Yeah,
so
up in Oak Park, Michigan.
Well, you get our quarterback.
That was what I'm saying. But the reason I'm bringing him is because now all of a sudden DeJuan Mathis comes down and he turns around to Justin and says, I'm having a great time. Mm-hmm. Or I'm having a bad time. It can't work against you, but I don't think I think you'll have a good time.
Well, I think what it does, though, is it gives you a chance that, so what, you might have lost a 4-star in the state, but he's not as good as this 5-star somewhere else. So, I mean, it gives you a chance to cherry pick by position players that you need to help your team get to that championship level.
And you mentioned, and I think it was a very strong point about this guy being able to go back and report to those guys. Giovanni Shepard is a very, very well-known guy in the Houston area, and Georgia is recruiting two of the best players in Houston for the 2020 class, one of whom was just on campus this past weekend, Zach Evans. Yeah, the number 1 running back in the nation. Oh, yeah. He's very close with Giovanni Shepard.
And I know
they're
Coach
very
McGee,
familiar.
when we played LSU, he went and watched that kid on Friday. He went over there to watch that Evans kid. And that just goes to show you where you're thinking ahead. The other point that we need to make about the preferred walk-on weekends, the junior weekends, is the fact that these last 2 weeks, compared to years past, well, last year we were able to do it, it really gives your head coach a chance to do a lot of recruiting that he'd never be able to do if you were trying to sign 25.
Absolutely.
Right now. And when you're in a state like Georgia where, I mean, it's hard for me to believe anybody's stronger in the state as far as Kirby Smart. But when he goes to a high school or he goes to wherever he goes to a basketball game or whatever it is, that's big news. And it not only affects that junior that might be the recruit, but some 7th grader that's a Georgia fan, and all of a sudden here's Kirby Smart sitting in the stands over here at some high school. What's the chance? I'm just telling you, it's so strong that I know our fans appreciate it, but it really is a big part of developing a recruiting network that just carries over. You got to have the high school coaches on your side. You got to have the let's just say, I know when I used to go to some of these schools, they say, Coach, if you just got time, we got this lady down here that's a guidance counselor, has been a Georgia fan all her life. Could you take a picture with her? You know what I mean? I mean, that stuff like that is just strong now.
I follow a lady, actually. I won't give away which school she's at, but I thought it was really funny. She's like a counselor, I believe, at a high school here in Georgia. Will Muschamp and Brian McClendon stopped by, and she was wearing her G shirt, and she was like, "All us dogs back together again."
That was good. They need to know where their bread's buttered. And I told you before, you never know when those counselors come in to help. I told you about the one in Florida that hid that kid out of the bowling alley for me. I mean, and that was because 3 years before I'd started building a relationship in that school. And we can talk about stuff like that a little bit more in ad lib. But let's go on to some questions here.
All right, we want to launch in here real quick.
No, I did want to bring up. I mentioned Your Pie earlier in the episode, and confirmation they are opening. They're in the process of opening 50 more locations. They have 60 now. So if you want to, I don't know, print money, I guess the way I call it. But if you want a fantastic business opportunity, reach out to Drew and Natalie French at Your Pie. They can help you out a lot. I know that Drew and Natalie, they're always on the list of 30 under 30, 40 under 40 type, of fantastic up-and-coming business owners, and they get all these franchise, great franchise awards and stuff like that. I don't have a list of awards, but they've gotten a ton of them. And I know they advertise on the show to tell people, hey, swing by Your Pie. I'm kind of pushing hey, open at Your Pie.
Yeah.
You
just want the card, though.
Well, yeah. I mean, come on. But the point being, it's a great business opportunity. One of the guys who I idolized when I was coming up through the ranks, Bob Rosato, great photographer, one of the greatest sports photographers I've ever had a great opportunity to work with. He's open too. So
doesn't know how to eat, man.
And he's still he'll be at the Super Bowl taking pictures. He's at every SEC championship game. He still has his photography business, but Bob's opened up 2 of those things. So Bob was an innovator in one industry. He saw a great opportunity and jumped on it in the second industry. And is a guy, again, I wish I was half as smart as Rosato. So I'm thinking, we need to. We could have a UGASports branded Your Pie.
I like the sound of that.
I'm just saying, do all our shows from there.
Bring you some, bring you some hot pizza scoop. All right, a couple of questions rolling in here. Definitely want to take this one from Chuck Ward because he said he asked it last week, so I want to make sure we give him some time.
Yeah, Chuck.
He says, same question for me as last week. He says, given what we may have learned in a week or so in recruiting, Do we take tight end, wide receiver, DB, or do you drop one of those positions if Elam and Cross both wanted to come? Or do you drop a position and take a guy like Shepard if you feel that it helps with some of these 2020 guys?
Well, I think the last part, the 2020 thing doesn't really – that would never be the answer to take one guy over another. For me, I'd say you're always looking at what your squad needs are, and it's always based on the best available first. And then if it's not the best available, then you rank them by position who you need position-wise. So pretty obvious that our first need, more than likely to me, is a corner. Mm-hmm. And then, Cross is a safety. He's fast and everything, but, he's a big-time player. So, would you take him over a lesser player at, say, maybe tight end? Although we do need tight ends based on what we've lost, but – we also have different personnel groupings. We might not need to play two tight ends as much. If you don't have them, you don't play them as much. So I can see us being a little bit more of a – I'm not going to put words in the mouth of Kirby or Coley, but I can see with guys like Cook, I can see more of this three-wide stuff where this guy just, lighting it up, being a slot guy, doing a lot of things. Now, that might not be true, but – if I'm looking at it, that's something that you utilize and work him out there. But personnel-wise, the answer is best player first, position next.
Really?
Fair. Yeah.
I mean, this is going to be talked ad nauseum when it comes to the NFL draft because that's what you're sitting at number, I'd say 11, 12. Some of those surefire first rounders up there. Now people are going to question you that they say, look. This guy is still available. Do you take? And we see it every time, every analyst. Do you take the best guy, or do you take the guy a position you need? And sometimes we see a guy fall because everyone's taking positions of needs, and you're like, "How is this guy not a first, five?
Absolutely,
the first five." And like, well, nobody needed
Todd Gurley.
him.
Todd Gurley
needed him.
You also look at the academic profile too, because when you only have two,
that's a good point.
You're not going to take a risk on quite as quickly unless the guy is just an unreal player. And, we're not talking out of school. Pickens has had some academic issues, but he's doing better. But I just think our team looks at, especially when you got two or three left, best player first, then needs. So if you don't get the best player, then more than likely you're not going to have a chance at three best players. You're probably going to get one of those three. Then the next thing would be which position do we need next for that next player.
Makes sense. So it's kind of a good consolation prize. If you're not getting the best player available, you're at least getting someone who addresses your needs. That's why you're the Hall of Fame coach. And
no, I'm not. Really. I think personnel.
We write bad stories for a living.
No, you brought up Pickens, and I think that this is an interesting question as well here from our guy Ronnie Brown. He says, Coach, what goes into recruiting a kid that may be a question mark on whether or not they can qualify? How do you go about handling that?
Well, first of all, you look at his transcript and look where he's going to school and look what his chances are of making the kind of grades he's got to make to make the difference. Now, more than likely, I don't know whether he has a test score yet or not, but that's the first thing you look at is a test score close enough that he can come up on it with, the right kind of training. And, people that are making 1,500, 1,600 on a test, they get training. So it's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you parents out there that have kids that are growing up, if you think that they're just going to go in there and smoke the SAT and ACT just because of their background, it's not going to happen. Now, occasionally it might, but get them into a class where they get one-on-one tutoring on how to take the test. It's important to know how to take the test besides just the fact of knowing your skill level, because it's a pressure-packed event for them, and it controls a lot about what they're going to be able to do. And you can gripe and moan about, well, he's made 1,400 and he still can't get in. Look, that's up to you as a parent to get him in a training program where you get a tutor that's if he was sick, you would get a doctor for him. If she was needed some help with her piano lessons, you'd get him. So get him an ACT or SAT tutor. That's a lecture from the old coach.
There you go.
But getting back to the answer there on the fact on the one guy, how has he done? Has he gotten a lot better this last semester? If he's shown some improvement there and he's buckled down and he understands that he's really in trouble and he needs to go ahead, or is he just saying, look, I can't make it, he's quit? You're not going to go for a guy like that.
Yeah. Well, you also got to be sure that they haven't jump too far too quickly. Because if all of a sudden you're making 11s on the ACT and all of a sudden you score 19, they're going to flag it.
Oh, absolutely.
So just
yeah, but that's happened before. But where it really hurts you is if it's an in-state player and the grades are starting to get a lot better. I mean, certainly you got some teachers there who are going to work with him, but an out-of-state player, some of those out-of-state schools aren't going to like it if that guy gets eligible in school.
Yeah.
That's a good point, and that's some of the I won't say dirty pool, but that's there. You have more draw with the guidance counselor that wants her picture taken with Kirby Smart.
They know where their bread is buttered, man.
That's
right. Then the kid is going to LSU. Who
and most counselors are going to work with all students, not just the athletes. But if you show some, they want to help you get in school and all, but it's a tough deal. What do we got here next?
All right, Alvin Todd says, do you think we go after one of these receivers in the transfer portal if we don't get George Pickens? Thoughts on
New York Minute? That's a rhetorical question.
Thoughts on Josh?
Who's visiting this weekend?
Thoughts on Josh Amatora Bebe? So this weekend you've got Lawrence Cager in town.
Him.
So Amatora Bebe.
We're not going to recruit him, but we are going to recruit that one.
Yes, Cager. So Amatora Bebe, for those of you familiar, 4-star, was at USC. I don't see that happening for Georgia. I think that they've got they either want to go with a young guy or one of these older transfer guys that they can kind of get on a small rental.
Well, tell them about this. Who was his coach at Miami?
At Cager? That was James Coley.
Where does he coach now?
He's here.
Does he have a pretty good idea of his work habits?
I think so.
Does he have a pretty good idea of his family? Did he recruit him in high school?
Yep.
So.
And it doesn't hurt. And it doesn't hurt that Cager was already thinking highly of Georgia before he committed to Miami.
Guys make a mistake when the first. And somebody said, didn't we hire a tight end coach that used to be at Miami?
That's true too.
Do you think he's watched him the last 3 years?
Yeah. So
there's some dots connecting there.
So Lawrence,
get out of here with your logic.
74 years old and damn, so much smarter. But that's the logic there. We're going to hopefully that guy. I would say. That's a Yale lock of the year as far as opportunity.
I think so as well. I think Lawrence Cager is going to be your guy. 6'5", a guy who's probably around 215, 220 now. I'd have to look up his current weight at Miami, but a guy that. Look, he's familiar with the program. He's clearly familiar with several of the coaches on staff. He liked the program before he even went to Miami. I think this is the route that you end up going at wide receiver this year. You get a guy on a 1-year rental. That gives you the depth you want this year. You take him off the books next year. Boom, boom, boom. Everybody's free. Everybody's happy.
And we got Blaylock coming in. We got Kyrus Jackson redshirted. We got Tommy Bush redshirted. We got Cook can play slot.
Yeah, and I keep thinking that people, again, when we did this in the spring and we did it in the summer, we always talk about how people forget about James Cook.
Absolutely.
He is a lightning-fast running back, and he is a great wide receiver. And what did they call that, that freak position?
The freak.
But seriously, when we did these shows and when they had the open scrimmage, remember they had the open scrimmage? The number one guy I talked about that day was James Cook.
Yeah, he
because of the way he just speed and everything. But he just had a hard time getting in the lineup when you got because we were more of a 12 personnel, too tight, hammer tong backs type stuff. But I think we need to spread things out.
I'm just saying,
you saw that long run he made, and he had one call back. I mean, the guy is
that's what I'm saying. You got that guy. So I know we obsess about who's the next wide receiver, but I'm thinking. That's a guy who, if all of a sudden you take Swift out, he steps over into that role. He can be your back, and then you leave him on the field when Swift comes back in, and he just jumps over to the slot. The guy is a playmaker, so keep your eye on him.
How about all those pundits saying, "Why would Riley Ridley leave?" Did you see where he's now rated between a high first round or low second round by some of these people?
I have not seen that.
Hey, I can guarantee that guy is going early.
Joel Moody says,
I was wrong.
Cook equals Kamara. That's a role that Georgia
that.
definitely hopes he will play. Couple more recruiting questions.
A little bit more,
was that Butch Jones?
It was.
Come on, Butch, put him in the game.
Couple more recruiting questions here, but let's hit with Roddy real quick.
That's why he went to Alabama. He thought Kamara had another year, but he wasn't eligible. No, that's terrible.
That's me, but that is funny.
That's a big question. What is Butch going to coach down there?
Trash can? Well, he had the trash can.
Oh.
That was his signature thing. Come on.
I know their brick by brick thing was.
Oh,
a
yeah,
He's
that's
teaching a
true.
construction engineering course.
Speaking of construction, if you need new construction done on your house, call our friends over at Aaron Overhead Doors. They are
Look over this way
Yeah,
so
look
the
over
folks
his
can
shoulder.
see the
Get
number.
Call them. We've had unsolicited testimonials of people going out to calling Aaron Overhead Doors, having them come out, do work for them. I want to point out two quick things that I seldom mention, but they do have financing on if you need a garage door and you're like, it's post-Christmas, I don't have a lot of cash on me, but I need to get this garage door fixed. They have financing. Also, they do a free quote. They come out and they charge you for the whole, hey, we came to visit you, that's $75, Lowe's. If you have somebody that needs to come out, they will do a free quote for you and let you know what it's going to cost. And knowing Ryan Lucia and the folks at Aaron Overhead Doors, they are going to put everything in there. It's not going to be, oh yeah, it's $400, and then all of a sudden you get your bill and it's like $850, and you're like, oh
Sure.
well, we ran into some problems, or you have a special order. No, that's not the way he does it. They are a customer service company who can make your house look great. They can fix your house. They can fix your garage door opener. They can fix your garage door. They can remodel it for you, put in a much prettier door. I wish my neighbors would use them. They have an ugly house.
Well,
That
what if
one
they
on the right or left?
What if the
That's what I'm not saying. I will say they're in our cul-de-sac.
Wow. Well, all right. Damn.
Hey, look,
Claws
this is
are out.
this is the pot called kettle black. If you see my rundown shanty, then you would know that. But I don't have a garage door anymore. We took ours out and made my office. Yes, I work out of the garage. I'm not in the basement.
You got a broken down GMC Sierra sitting in the front lawn.
It runs though. Teach the boy to drive it.
Jarvis Hanna says, can we get Zach Evans and Kendall Milton at the running back position in 2020? Two of the top running backs in the nation, 2 5-stars. Look,
You can never sign 2 5-stars in the same class.
Yeah. So, but I get where this question is coming from, because Milton and Evans both seem highly interested in Georgia. Evans just on campus this past weekend. Look, the fact of the matter is, I'm going to say I really don't know what they're going to do at the running back position in that class, because you've got so many high-level guys interested right now. They had Marshawn Lloyd, 5-star on campus this past weekend. You had Seth McGowan, a 4-star out of Texas this past weekend. You got DeMarcus Bowman, who a lot of people have slated to Georgia for a long time, a 4-star guy out of Florida. You've got 4-star Tank Bigsby, who's interested and has been for some time.
Georgia boy.
Here's the point too that I think when we didn't get the kid that went to Alabama,
Trey Sanders.
We get down to the wire with Sanders. There's a situation there. We lost that guy. We probably could have jumped on a couple others, but we didn't do it. So I think that in itself shows you that Kirby and Coach McGee think that they got a shot at getting to these other guys like they've done before. And I like that plan too. I mean, hey, shoot for the stars, and based on what I've heard, Zeus is really doing well in the offseason, but, it still remains to be seen. And you got to think that Swift's going to be a lot healthier and going to be ready to rock and roll too. So I'm not worried too much about back.
It recalls the DeAndre Swift to Neil Carter class.
That's exactly what I was going to mention.
They had 2 guys committed, basically came down to the wire. They said, hey, Tennille, we don't have a spot for you to early enroll. You could still be part of the class if you want. He said, no, I'm going to take this opportunity. I'm going to go to Texas. They didn't panic. They didn't move on.
Is he already leaving Texas?
He is, yeah. He's moved on to Sam Houston State, I believe.
That's a pretty good plan there back.
But you open that room up, and then in the next class was Zamir and James Cook.
But there was a panic. An absolute panic on letting Tennille Carter get away.
Yep.
And I may have been the ringleader on that panic. I'm not going to say anything. But I was like, look, how do you let a guy who's, an All-American,
4-star from the state of Texas running back?
This is a kid you want. I mean, his film was phenomenal. And the coaches, and again, I give the coaches a lot of credit because it's their job. I don't like anybody telling me how to do my job. I don't care for the criticism. I'll listen to it and I'll try to get better. But I'm like, look, stay in your lane. And here we were freaking out over the fact that they're letting Tennille Carter go away, and they're like, we got Zamir White coming in, and we got James. We got a plan. We're not just sitting here twiddling our thumbs. So
nothing wrong with class separation.
the point is to what you guys are saying. They didn't get Trey Sanders. Everyone lost their mind. And we expected him to come to Georgia.
Tough to lose him,
it's tough to lose him. That's a guy you want, but there is a plan B. We are
And
seeing that with the tight end situation. We've seen a plan B, C, D, and E. There's a plan A, B, and C on the when they went for Nestor and Wright, and now they're on.
A lot of times, though, you don't really have a chance to implement that plan because we've talked about it before. How many of these guys are going to go pro early? So that makes you change what you're looking at. Who would have thought that some of these guys would go early, and they did. Now you got to rectify that with your squad limits and your way you recruit. But it's just, pro teams got good general managers, good coaches. We got a great general manager, personnel guy, in Marshall Malco. That sucker is.
We could pick his brain for like 10 minutes.
If he's not the best in the country, he's in the top 2 because they are so organized on the. I mean, I have never asked him about a guy, except maybe somebody who was just born at Athens Regional last week that he didn't know about. I mean, right off the bat, because somebody will see me out of the club or something and say, "Hey, what are we on this kid in 2020 from someone?" I'll just say, "Yeah, he's okay, but probably not good enough." Or, "Hey, he's a stud," but. They know that stuff, man. They know it back and forth.
That's what I want to know with Malcha, and I had him confused.
Malco,
excuse me. I had him confused with someone else. I thought he was one of the GAs.
He's young looking, but hey, how old is McVay?
That's true.
Yeah,
but he looks like he's.
That's the thing about our defensive coaches that are going to be the coordinator or coordinators. I think age is relative, man.
Yeah, we need to jump on that question real quick, but I had Marshall confused with somebody. I thought. My mind, it was a different guy was the director of player personnel because I don't know. I never speak to him. We never get to talk to him, so I didn't know who he was. And I actually went into the UGA, not the thing online, the website, the Georgia's website.
Yeah, Georgia Dogs.
Georgia Dogs. We never go there, so I can't remember the name of the website. So I went there and said, wait, that's Marshall. And I'm like, that guy's, I got shoes older than him.
Yeah.
He's a young guy, but he knows all these people. And I just want to give Kirby credit for identifying somebody who is very young, but is talented.
Well, he saw him over at Alabama when he was working there as a, he's a student, just like Schumann was. Yeah. And this lady, this Perno lady was over there too, the one that's working with the nutrition. So you see the talent.
Hey, real recognized real, baby.
Lanning was over there as a assistant. So that's a good way to, and that's one thing Coach Switzer told me when I got a head job. He said, get you a bunch of young guys that aren't looking to move, and you're going to train them to do what you want them to do and go from there. And that's a really good way that Kirby's done. He had some older guys that, really helped him too. But I just think you look at this McVay guy, 33 years old. He's talented. He's been around some good coaches. His dad was a general manager and a coach.
Making my ass look bad.
So he's doing a good job. Well,
dude, I brought you in when you were a kid.
And I haven't gotten any better.
Well,
that's the problem.
You're just 31, right? You got 2 years left to make it to be the
2 years to be the head coach.
He's going to be the head of Rivals.
Yeah. We're going to take Roddy down.
So I've got to be nice to him because I know I'm going to be working for him one day.
But I do like the fact, I'm kind of not on the team, but I'm just kind of an adjunct guy. But I always like it when you guys break in that scam.
But we live for Scoop. I mean, I don't think it's a way of actually we don't really keep score that way. But there is something great about professionally being first and being right.
It feels
right.
So good. It feels so good.
Well, no, I guess because here's the thing: we never do an ad for everybody else, but we never do an ad for our site. It's UGASports.com. It's $99.95 for a year or $9.95 a month, 27 cents a day if you sign up for the year.
We also got the free promo.
We do have a free promo, 30 days for free. Promo code UGA30. Type that in, you get free 30 days. The point being, when we break news first, and we broke so much news about the coaching searches and the coaching departures and the team and the recruiting scoop, I feel like the folks who paid us 27 cents that day got their money's worth, or that $9.95 that month. So if all of a sudden, there was a news story up today about a Georgia target who you need to check out, and it's from Adam Friedman.
Mm-hmm.
It's on the. We have 2 message boards. We have the dog vent and then the vault. The vault's all about recruiting. The dog vent's about everything else. You go over the vault, check it out. There is big news coming about one of Georgia's major remaining targets. It's there.
What is it?
You got to pay
27 cents.
But you got a 5-star. You got a 5-star update from Chad Simmons that dropped today.
Yeah.
I posted notes with 4 guys from the visited this past weekend.
Tease, man.
I mean,
I'm just saying the point being when he breaks news like that, as a boss, I'm just thrilled to death because I'm like, okay, it just always it validates, the little money that we've invested in him.
I tell you what I like about
this
that,
my
though,
guy's
and I'm not
kicking
going
ass,
to do
and I love
anything
it.
else except, but I thought Shepard was out to pasture, man.
Yeah, I thought it was done.
And then all of a sudden,
I may have said so on the radio to someone.
you
Sorry to the folks down in South Georgia when I said that Georgia did not take a chance with him.
and, you were all of a sudden you had that wide receiver too saying that Georgia was hot on him. I mean that was great news. But what do we got? Any more tough things?
Well, we're getting close to wrapping up here. I wanted to touch with you, Coach. You got any wisdom to share with us over this past 74 years? What's the big takeaway for you?
Wisdom.
Yeah.
I tell you what, that's a really tough question there. I tell you what is really good for me today, and not being sentimental or emotional, but I take a lot of pride in being a coach. And for people to still call me coach that played for me or worked for me or were fans, I'm still kind of considered their coach. That means a lot to me, particularly with some of the things that have happened to me that were, people hung in there that knew what I was all about. But I think it's just –
Well, you got a couple guys going to the NFL.
It's just a really good feeling to know that you always want to be surrounded by your family. They're always going to be, but having coached in so many different places. When a guy calls you up from Washington today that you coached in 1977,
wow,
that's impressive. And I'm not throwing out any love there about myself. It's good to know that I tried to be fair to these guys, and whether they're first team or fourth team, and we had a lot of good wins, and we're talking about 2 of them going up for the Hall of Fame here, in Champ Bailey and Richard Seymour, who really were quality guys besides just being tremendous athletes. I mean, when you look at the size and speed of Seymour, and I think one of the things that these voters need to understand, some of his stats might not be overwhelming as far as sacks, lost yardage plays, but just the fact that he took up so much space and made other guys look good. I mean, the one defensive end's in the Hall of Fame already that played from Southern Cal, and some of these other guys, I just think you got to look at his force on defense, what he was able to do to set other people up. And he was just, I never will forget a couple of times he stood up in front of the whole room at Georgia and just basically told everybody, said, look, you guys can gripe and moan about what you want to. This is whatever we say we're going to do, whatever he says we're going to do, that's what we're going to. I mean, I was just talking about doing something, and that's impressive. And Richard Seymour was a tremendous athlete, but he was better than that, just a quality guy. And he came to school when he was 17 years old. And then, of course, really? Champ was just and I always busted Brad Scott. I said, how could you lose a guy like that from your own hometown there in South Carolina, Columbia, South Carolina? And he laughs about it. But I lost one that went to South Carolina, defensive back here. We screwed up on him, that corner. We should have taken him if we could have got him. But going back to Champ, just a great family, mom, dad, everything, and brothers, sisters, just easily the best athlete I've ever coached, a human dynamo. And people kid about the tunnel screen, but have you ever seen that sucker when he didn't catch it and when he didn't show him his tail light? So why wouldn't you run it with him? But he was, to me, if he doesn't get in, it'll be a big surprise. It's going to be a push on Seymour because you got to pick 5, but they're actually sending a film crew from Denver tomorrow to Athens, and I'm going over there to talk to them a little bit about Champ's background and everything. Wow. And I'm sure they're going to talk to Kirby about playing with him and stuff like that. But they're going to chronicle the whole week with Champ and getting in the Hall, so it'll be great.
Well, to your point, I've had your former players reach out to me about the podcast and say, hey, I love seeing my coach on your podcast. I love seeing him out there. I love hearing him. I tune in every week. And we've had some other guys drop us special notes, and we won't embarrass them, but some folks who we really respect in this business have said some nice things to us. We've also had some people say some mean stuff too, but that's
whatever.
That's okay. But and I don't bring it to your attention, Coach, but I have other guys who played for you say, hey, I love having the coach on the show. It takes me back to my days. And he doesn't tell you all the stories that he could tell you because I understand you guys are on 11 Alive. And he says, but if you ever want to have a off-the-record conversation, let us know because but they do love you. They do respect you. And as we've seen, a ton of happy birthday wishes. Let me squeeze in one more commercial before we cut out. Big shout out to Academia Brewing Company. I've been knocking back their beer well, not as fast as you. If you get a chance, the Super Bowl's coming this weekend. If you're not here at Champy's enjoying their special, and again,
6 beers, 12 wings, $20. 2 wings per 1 beer. That's a great ratio.
That is a great ratio. So for $20, you can have a fantastic Super Bowl party here at Champy's. Also, we know that we have way more listeners that can fit into a Champy's. And some of you want to swing by Europot, get a great pizza. But if you go out to Academia, they have great food. They have a chef out there. They do amazing things. And they also have a beer list. And here's the thing. We can't tell you what beers they have because they switch so fast. So, I would have to have them maybe just take a picture, text to me to kind of read off the different beers. But if you get a chance, swing by Academia, take care of the UGA owner out there. We'd really appreciate it, and thank them for being a sponsor of our show.
All right. Well, we will be
day,
back.
how about 365 game day?
Oh, I mentioned them in the beginning.
We'll be back. We'll be back next week, and
Are we going to be on Tuesday or Wednesday next week?
We got to decide that.
Yeah, we do have to decide that. I think we told some people we'd be on Tuesday. They're visiting.
Who's visiting?
Just some of our loyal listeners. So
we have a lot of people that come out. I think we probably will need to do it Tuesday because Wednesday we might need to be on the road.
That's true. So anyway, we're
going to cover some 20.
Regardless, tomorrow is next Tuesday, big show, the pre-signing day show. We'll have some predictions. We'll go over hot boards, etc. For everybody here, though,
I like those hot boards.
Happy birthday to you, Coach. Thank you for being here and doing this with us. It's always our pleasure. And
put that hat on there. I'll give me that red one. You put the blue. That's a Kentucky hat, man. Yeah, here we go.
Who's lime green?
Man, my head is too damn big. I
snapped
it. Man. I told you. My head is too damn big for this thing, man.
We're going to cut this cake up and give some of the fans here.
Happy birthday, Coach.
Hey, thanks.
Happy birthday, Coach. Tune in next week. We'll talk to you
Joe
then.
Marks.
That's it for this episode of the UGA Sports Live Podcast. Tune in next week for more Georgia Bulldogs news and notes from Athens.